Hello and welcome back to this this is a completely new story. So used to saying that in all my videos that I've had recently. I came up with it like a few weeks ago, and because it's a 300 special, I tried to check if anyone else has done something like this before so I can have a fresh idea for my specials. The full series is coming out like tomorrow or a few days time, because I'm having a little break from school because it's Easter. It's gonna be Easter soon, so yeah. Now it's time to dive into this scenario that I've come up with. So how this would even happen is that Dealer would decide to go and live in the Orange Islands with Ash's unknown father. I ain't gonna be talking about father theories. I don't have time for that. Just have time to get into this what if. So, and then eventually they would have Ash and Ash's father will go off on his mysterious journey according to some sources. Anyway, that isn't important right now. So on the night of Ash's Pokemon journey, before he'd go and get his starter, he would be dreaming about the 3 starters that Professor Ivy presents to a young trainer, Sunkern, Slugma and Marill. As then Ash would be thinking, and he would decide that he wants Slugma as he likes how fiery it is and he likes its evolution Magcargo. As then Ash would continue dreaming and dreaming until he eventually overslept like in the original. Then when he woke up, he realised that everyone else had gotten their starter and probably went off to a few islands to start off their journey. So Ash would quickly rush to the lab, and this time would actually try to put some decent clothes on for a Pokemon journey. So he'd run into his rival Tad, like the guy who Ash fought with Charizard in the original story, but this time making him Ash's rival. So Tad would be with his Poliwag that would eventually become a Poliwrath, the Poliwrath that we saw in the episode Charizard Chills, and he would be coming with the starter that Ash wanted the most. So he'd then say, "I'm sorry Ash, but looks like there's going to be some it looks like you're going to have to wait for the next batch of starters to come. Anyway, it's not my problem. See you." Then Ash, after hearing these words, would feel a bit disheartened, but his stubborn nature would force him to run inside, regardless if there weren't any. So he would run into the building or lab where he'd see Professor Ivy there, and then she would say, "Oh, hello Ash. What are you here for? Your starter? Sorry, but they're all taken." I should say, "No, there's got to be something for me. I dreamt about me becoming a Pokemon trainer last night. I ain't gonna take no for an answer. Please, Professor, please have something for me." And Professor Ivy was like, "Anyway, let's go see in the Pokemon part of my lab." As then she'd come back and would say, "Originally I wanted to use this Pokemon for research, but here you go." And then she'd throw out a Pokeball, and it would be a Sandshrew, a weirdish pinkish looking Sandshrew. Parts of its skin were completely pink, and other parts of its skin were a mixture of a sandy yellowy pinkish colour. And then Ash would call his supposedly new Pokemon quite cute and would say that he likes how it looks, even though he ain't a fan of pink. It really works well on this Sandshrew. And by the way, I actually made this Sandshrew art all by myself. These days I want to begin trying to make my own art of Pokemon, but not of people. I can't make people. Like, look at my channel's icon art. It's not really that good. I'm trying to learn how to do online art, other than colouring in some few like empty uncolored Pokemon renders. So yeah. Anyway, to get back to the story. Ash would pick up Sandshrew, but would quickly scratch him in the face as he didn't want to be associated with him, as it felt like it was being used as a tool. First off, this strange woman had found it and took it away for tests, away from its home on Pinken Island with its friends and family. Like she could automatically do that, like she was the boss of it. And then now she's handing it over like some object to some kid who was too late to get the actual starter or the actual Pokemon he actually needed and wanted. It really didn't want to cooperate, but it wasn't really its choice. So it would reluctantly go behind Ash after scratching him, as then Ivy would give Ash Pokeballs and a Pokedex, as then she'd say that she borrowed them from a friend from Kanto called Professor Oak. As then Ash would add Sandshrew to his party, but when he tried to use all of the Pokeballs or just scratch it, as then the Pokeball would make a mini explosion which would burn Ash and Ivy a bit. But then Sandshrew would just step behind Ash's side, as then Ash would set off and would say goodbye to the good professor as he'd adventure around the Valentia Island a little bit, and then when he saw no Pokemon, he'd move on to this island, like I think it was Tangelo Island. Probably wrong, but anyway, he'd be walking around trying to look for a few more Pokemon, trying to look for his first catch. He would then encounter a Krabby who would ask Sandshrew to use a slash, one of the moves he saw on the Pokedex that he got. But Sandshrew would just look at him and would just pretend like he didn't say anything. He would then call for a dig, saying the same thing would happen. As then he would then call for a scratch, as then Sandshrew would just lie down perfectly on the beach and would begin sleeping. This would annoy Ash so much that he would decide to take matters into his own hands, as he would then try and throw a massive rock at the Krabby, a bit bigger than the original rock he threw because he's on a beach, which wouldn't be a very smart decision, as then the Krabby would get so annoyed it would snap its two pincers together or whatever it is, or as then a bunch of Krabbies would come and surround Ash and his Sandshrew. As then this Krabby was the leader of a massive gang or group of Krabbies. As then they'd all try and attack Ash and Sandshrew. Sandshrew would be defenseless as it would be lying down, but would be hit by a bubble beam which would do a lot of damage to it. As then they decide to attack Sandshrew, as they were a bit jealous that it had a trainer while they had to live on a beach full of scraps. As then they were attacking Sandshrew, as Ash would begin defending Sandshrew, as he would pick it up and defend it from the onslaught of the many crab Pokemon. Sandshrew, realizing that his trainer really cares for it, despite not being the smartest guy, it would decide that maybe it wants to help him out a bit, as it would then jump on one of the Krabbies and begin slashing it, as then it would defeat the other, as then there were only 2 Krabbies left. Sandshrew was a bit tired and realised that he wouldn't be able to get out of this situation alone, as he would then look back to Ash with a look of trust, as then Ash, realising that his Pokemon finally trusted him, was called for a slash. This would defeat one of the this would defeat the other Krabby with a critical hit and would leave the leader on its own. The leader would try go for a surprise hydro pump, which would quickly be dodged by Sandshrew. Then Sandshrew would charge towards it with a slash, but then the Krabby would quickly dodge and switch positions. Then it would use a bubble wing, which would do a lot of damage to Sandshrew. As then Sandshrew would then go and would use one slash, which would finally finish off the Krabby. This would make Sandshrew victorious. As then Ash would smile at it, and then he would give it a mini fist bump. But then Sandshrew would immediately faint from all the fatigue. So Ash would rush it to a nearby Pokemon Center. So then he'd quickly heal it. So then he would then explore the island for a bit, where he would find a Seel, as he would decide that this would be his first catch, as there was nothing else that showed up so far. As would use Sandshrew against the Seel. Sandshrew would begin using a lot of not Sandshrew, as Sandshrew can't learn Bubble Beam, silly me. Anyway, the Seel would begin using a lot of Bubble Beams, which would do a lot of damage to Sandshrew, as it would avoid most of them, and only one group of bubbles hit it. As then it would use a slash, which would do decent damage to Seel. As then Seel would then go for an ice beam, which would shock Ash, as turned out that this Seel was like level 15 or level 10, and it was a bit higher level, and it was higher level than his Sandshrew. As then Sandshrew would tank the hit with its hard shell, as it would still do a lot of damage, but it's only like its shell or outer area would be frozen. As then Sandshrew would still find it hard to move, because the frozen area would quickly spread around Sandshrew's body. As then Ash would realise just how strong this Seel's ice beam is, as he would then call for a dig, as he would tell Sandshrew to dig deep underground. I know this sounds dumb, like he wants to go to the Earth's core and burn Sandshrew, but that was the entire plan. Sandshrew would dig so much that when it reached the Earth's core, all the ice would immediately melt off, so then come back up, as then it would be ready for battle. This would happen so quickly that Seel wouldn't really know what just went on, but would know that its enemy was moving a bit faster now. As then Sandshrew would use a slash, which would instantly knock out Seel, as it would be a critical hit. As then Ash would quickly throw a Pokeball and would catch it. Then Ash would move on to the island of the first gym battle. I don't really know its name. As he would then meet the gym leader's little brother, Centra, who was teasing Ash about saying that a guy with a Sandshrew will not stand a chance against his sister's Pokemon. So Ash would say, "Oh, you want to bet? Let's see how strong you really are, kid." As then Central would get annoyed and would decide that he wants to battle Ash. Would be getting ready to pull out his only Pokeball, but then Cissy would intervene and would tell her brother to leave Ash alone. She would then say, "Centra, this guy's here for a challenge. What are you doing bothering him? This isn't even your problem. Go back to where you were before." Then Centra would obey his sister and would go back to the house or wherever he was. Anyway, Sissy would come and greet Ash and would ask him if he's here for the gym battle, and Ash would say yes he is, and he wants to challenge the Orange League and see what he can do and win the Orange Cup, or whatever it's called, for himself and his family, and show the Orange League and the world how strong he really is. Sissy would like this speech and confidence, Ash would then say, okay, now, you look like you're just starting out. And trust me, this gym, even though it's one of the weaker ones, is really the best for starting out trainers. Especially a trainer with a Sandshrew, as she'd give a sly look to Ash's Sandshrew, basically saying that Sandshrew isn't really going to do well. As then, she would tell Ash to show her all of his Pokemon, as he would of course show Sandshrew and Seel, as then she'd say that he might stand a chance with Seel, but she's not sure about Sandshrew. As then she'd think for a little bit, and then to make it fair for Ash, she'd decide that he's only going to do one of the games that the trainer plays. He's going to do a water gun battle with her Seadra using Seel, and then all of his Pokemon are going to battle against her Blastoise, which hasn't battled in a very long time, and it's only been racing trainers. As then Ash would say, battle a fully evolved Blastoise. I think that's going to be easier than racing it. As then Cissy would say, it will be easier, trust me. It hasn't battled ever since it was a Squirtle. It's gotten so used to racing. I doubt it will have the kind of fighting capabilities that most Blastoise have. So don't worry about that. As then Ash, with a bead of sweat appearing on his face, would just decide to go through with the challenge, as he didn't really have a choice. If he wanted to get his first badge, he was going to have to go through it, like it or not. So he would do like the original water gun contest, where they're trying to hit as much cans as possible, and surprisingly, Seel would prove to be quite a decent challenge, as they both hit the same can, which would be a tie, which would annoy Seadra, but Sissy would say, good job, and now let's see how you fare against my Blastoise. As then, at first, Ash would try with Seel, as then Seel would use a few bubble beams and a few ice beams. The ice beams would be dodged, but the bubble beams would collide and would do decent damage to the experienced Blastoise that hadn't battled in a while. As then, Ash, realizing that they didn't do as much damage as he might have hoped, would decide to send in some backup with Sandshrew, as Sissy had allowed it. As then, Sandshrew would go and use a slash, which would do decent damage to Blastoise. As then Blastoise would go on and would use a Hydro Pump, which would hit Sandshrew and Seel, and it would do a lot of damage to Sandshrew, but not much to Seel. Both Pokemon would be sent back, especially Sandshrew. Then Sandshrew would then go for a Scratch, which would be much weaker than a slash, but it wasn't really the intention, as it would hit Blastoise for not much damage, but it would distract Blastoise. As then Seel would hit it with a very powerful bubble beam, as then this would cause another distraction, which would cause Sandshrew to use a dig, as would be underground. Blastoise wouldn't be able to track its movements, as would be hit, as then the ice beam from earlier would have frozen its leg. Realizing the predicament that her Blastoise was in, Sissy would decide to send in Seadra. Ash would then say, hey, that isn't fair, you didn't say nothing about you using your Seadra. Then she'd say, exactly, I didn't say any rules about that, so who said that I can't use my Seadra as well? It's only making things a bit fair since you're using your two Pokemon. As then Ash would say, but you have a Blastoise on your team. As then she says, quiet, either you follow the rules of the gym battle, or you just storm here and leave like a little 5-year-old crying about not being able to win the battle easy. As then Central from the side would be laughing at this comment. As then Ash would then use a slash on Seadra, which would do decent damage with his Sandshrew. As then Seel would use Bubble Beam on both sides, which would do decent damage. As then Seadra would use a massive hydro pump, which would hit Sandshrew for a lot of damage. Sandshrew would stand up, not wanting to make Ash look weak in front of Cissy and her little brother Centra. As then, Seel would use a massive bubble beam, which would do decent damage to Seadra. As then, Sandshrew would go for a dig, as it would then be trying to figure out who it was going to hit, as then it would hit Seadra. As then Seadra would be quite winded, so it would try go for another hydro pump, as then Sandshrew would slash through the hydro pump and knock it out with a slash. As then Cissy would say that she's impressed. As then Blastoise would go back to battling one-on-one. I mean, not one-on-one, but you know. As then Blastoise would decide to use a blizzard, a surprise move that it knew, on Seel, which would knock it out instantly. As then Ash would use his Sandshrew against Blastoise. As then Ash would call for a slash. As then Sissy would call for a Skull Bash. As then both moves would collide, as Blastoise would actually take more damage, as Sandshrew's small size allowed it to evade some of the attack. As then we'd see Sandshrew, in the midst of the intense battle, learn a new move, which would be Bulldoze, as it would hit Blastoise, as it would slow it down. Blastoise would try go for another hydro pump, but the speed lowering would make the hydro pump a lot slower than it should be, and its timing would be off. As then Sandshrew would quickly jump above the attack and would slash Blastoise in the face. But the thing was, the hydro pumps were located right next to Blastoise's face, so Sandshrew still took damage from the hydro pumps, which meant that Blastoise and Sandshrew were knocked out by some fluke from Ash. As then Cissy would say, well, as per the promises I gave you and said, as per the rules, you earned the badge. Even though most challengers don't earn the badge this way, I think you deserve it for all your perseverance. Anyway, I hope you take care and take the badge. Then Ash would take it and would celebrate. As then Sissy would say that it's beyond her how Sandshrew was able to defeat the Blastoise in such a way, as she's never seen such a strong Sandshrew. As then Ash would say it's also beyond him, as Sandshrew just so happens to be able to do all that the moment he got it, which is very rare for a new Pokemon. As then Ash would think about it, as then Ivy would say that she doesn't really know how many levels it is, and how old it is, and that she just found it on Pinken Island and decided to research it. So I should then figure out that his Sandshrew is probably a lot higher level than it lets on. As then Centra, after the battle, would say that he wants to see how strong Ash really is, as he's battled his sister many times and he has always failed to defeat her Blastoise, let alone her Seadra. So he wants to see if Ash really is strong or if that battle was a fluke. As then Central would decide to travel with Ash around the Orange Islands. So they go to like one of the Mandarin Islands. I don't know, they're like two. I think this is the south one, I don't know. The one where all the Pokemon went mad because of Butcherdy, no, not Butcherdy, what the hell is that? Butch and Cassidy controlling them with their Hypno. My god, I loved that episode, especially when Hypno was dancing. My god, I'm never going to forget that. But anyway, that aside, they decide to go to the island to do some training. and see if they could grow a bit, and see how strong Ash really was, and to see if he could grow a bit stronger. As the next gym battle, might be a bit harder, and the other ones, and the third and fourth battles are going to be mainly about battle. So they want to be preparing for the future, so they can just go to the gyms and just beat all the gym leaders easy. As then Ash would go and he would meet a Ponyta, as he would then use Sandshrew to battle it. As then Sandshrew would use a slash against Ponyta, which would do decent damage. Then Ponyta would use a point blank flame wheel, which would do a lot of damage to Sandshrew. As then Ash would call for a bulldoze, which would put Rapidash on the brink of fainting. As then would use a flamethrower, which would be avoided by dig. As then Sandshrew would hit not Rapidash but Ponyta with a dig, which would do a lot of damage. As then Ash would throw a Pokeball and would catch Ponyta, as he would say that he's got his second catch. As he would then take Sandshrew back by his side, as then Sandshrew will come back and would say, "Not gonna lie, but I think we need to work on how you catch Pokemon. And right now, I think it really is a fluke how you beat my sister." And now that is where I'm gonna end off this part. See you guys later. Bye.